Welcome back to another episode of Swing State Radio, episode 8. I'm your host, Kyle.
And I'm your host, Brian, and today we are going to cover the topic of fake news media, and not in your traditional, sense. We're going to talk about made-up stories that are popular on Facebook that, kind of took over the election and, in my opinion, actually had an effect on it.
Yeah, I don't know how big of a impact it could have had, or it did have, but I know there are, looking back at it, when people would share posts, whatever side it was on, I would read it just to, dig into it a little, and, I saw a post the other day showing, saying that Donald Trump was, he was, doing anti-Semitic stuff, and it's just, crazy the amount of stuff that has been reported on after the fact of all the false everything. So, I guess you can start it off and talk about the statistics behind it and how we came about this.
Alright, so we kind of got the idea. So BuzzFeed News just did a report on the viral fake election news outperforming the real news on Facebook in the final months up to the election. According to this report, during the 3 months leading up to the election, leading up to this fall election, the 20 top performing false election stories from hoax sites and hyper-partisan blogs generated 8,700,000 shares and reactions and comments on Facebook, compared to the 20 best performing election stories from 19 major news websites generated a total of 7,300,000 shares on Facebook. Or shares and reactions on Facebook. And, well, I kind of, expected that. I knew that this was an issue. It's insane to, finally see it quantified and to see the fact that, this is an issue. And I really don't see it changing in the foreseeable future.
Yeah, so going back to this this post that was shared, one of the fake ones, and this is a left-leaning post.
Yeah, this is from the Huffington Post that...
Well, this one's from the Washington Post. This is one that I saw somebody share the other day, and I read into it because it says anti-Semitism is no longer an undertone of Trump's campaign, it's a melody. And at the beginning, it comes off very true, saying Donald Trump and his surrogates have been playing footsie with the neo-Nazis, retweeting their memes, their messages, appearing on their radio shows and stuff. But in a speech, Trump warned that Hillary Clinton meets in secret with international banks to plot the destruction of U.S. sovereignty, and that a global power structure is conspiring against ordinary Americans. And this post says the Anti-Defamation League urged Trump to avoid rhetoric and tropes that historically have been used against Jews. So it's just weird, because there's nothing that mentions Jews in this whatsoever, or anything about anti-Semitism or anything, and then they said, well, Trump on Friday released his closing ad for his campaign, repeating the offending lines from the speech, illustrating images of George Soros, who's a Jew, and then federal chair Janet Yellen, and he used words talking to them, saying those who control the levers of power with global special interests in the global power structure, and it's saying it's anti-Semitic, and it's completely a falsified story. But then going to another one, which I saw yesterday shared, and when I saw it at first, I was like, what in the heck? There's no way. And the title of the article is, you've probably seen it on Facebook. It's been shared a ton. And it says Bernie Sanders could replace Trump with little known loophole. So I clicked on it and I was like, there's no way that this is like possible. And then it says, the first paragraph says, here's what we need to do to save the Great Society. The information we have is what we've all been waiting for, and we can make Bernie the president on Inauguration Day instead of President-elect Trump. And that first paragraph kind of, I guess some people might even click on the article and read the first paragraph and then just share it. And then other people will just see that title on just scrolling down their newsfeed and just hit share instead of actually reading into it. And then it goes on in the next paragraph and says, actually, no, we won't. There's no loophole that allows a random person to assume the office of president. That's pretty basic common sense, but you clicked on or even shared this article anyway, and this is the point of the post. And they're talking about how our social media sites have been flooded with misinformation the past few months, and while this has always been a problem, it now appears to have exploded over this election season, and we're seeing post after post stating just illogical things, and it's not a problem to either side.
Yeah. I mean, so, and this is just the problem with people retweeting and posting things that they don't do any of their own fact checking. They're, like, in my mind, lazy. Like, so for example, I found one, and I'm sure some people have seen this on Facebook or whatever, and it's that anti-Trump protesters have prevented an ambulance from basically going and getting basically they prevented an ambulance with a father of a 4-year-old from getting to the hospital, and the 4-year-old father died. And I saw that and I'm like, okay, like, you can say what you want about people protesting the election, but I don't think anyone is that cruel that they're not going to let an ambulance through. So I dug into it more, and of course, using the fact-checking website Snopes, again, it was found to be false. The origin was from mid-November, and the social media, whatever. I kind of already explained it. It said, the article says that they note that the trope derided protesters selfishly killing an innocent victim by blocking an ambulance. It's also, this is not just this time, something similar popped up in July of 2016 in reference to the Black Lives Matter protesters. And it was shared by, these, hyper partisan websites like InfoWars and things like that.
InfoWars.
Yeah. And what they found is that there's no corresponding news reports of such a death occurring, and there's no it's some ambiguous Facebook post that no one knows who it is. They didn't show any actual footage of this happening. They just found a clip of protesters, and that's what they've been. It's just but I saw on Twitter and that's where I first saw it. The article had been shared more than 10,000 or retweeted more than 10,000 times.
And that's just one social media site. It's crazy.
Yeah.
All the things that have been shared.
Yeah. Here's another. A writer for Newsweek, Ted Sequoia, I think that's how you pronounce it, basically wrote a full article deriding Democrats and Bernie or Busters for basically costing Hillary the election by believing the myth that that there's this all-powerful DNC that completely robs Hillary of the nomination. And while I think you can make arguments that it was bad for the DNC to basically anoint Hillary Clinton the nominee before there was even the primary process. What the article points out is that all the emails that were surfaced from the DNC leaks that talked about, oh, they're like trying to like affect Bernie Sanders, all date to when Bernie Sanders had mathematically been eliminated from the primaries and basically was still running as like a protest candidate. So, and then he goes on to talk about how the idea that Bernie Sanders would have necessarily beat Trump in a head-to-head, which, I mean, I have on our podcast before even said that I think Bernie would have easily beat Trump, but, like, I mean, he makes good points here where he says that we don't know because Bernie never beat Clinton. And, you know, he says that, like, there's a lot of information out there about Bernie Sanders that basically Republicans had ready if Bernie Sanders was the nominee. So, like, to, you know, constantly deride Democrats for picking Clinton, even, you know, though, like, and saying, oh, Bernie would have won, like, you know, that's not necessarily true either. It's just, the problem with social media is that, like we said, people are lazy, and they don't take the time to fact-check what they do. When we talk on the show, and we, you know, talk about information we get, you know, a lot of the information might be partisan, or, like, might come from websites that lean a certain way, but they're legitimate news sources, or legitimate, like, these people are, you know, legitimate, like, journalists or something, like, you know what I mean? Like, it's, you know, we're getting our information from viable news sources. The problem is that so many times you see these memes or fake news stories, and they're just not true in any way, but people don't take the time to, you know, do that. And, well, I'm not sitting here saying that fake news stories decided the 2016 election. I do, though, think that fake news stories have led to the hyper-partisanship we've slowly been moving towards as a country.
Oh, yeah, definitely. Like, the giant divide we have right now is insane.
Yeah.
And
I mean, how many people are willing to sit down and do what we do on a regular basis for our podcast and show?
So I found something else talking about the traffic that these fake posts pull in and the amount of money they rake in. They can make up to $5,000 a month pushing information they know is untrue. And supposedly there's, like, they call them paid trolls, which are like just people paid in Russia who are trolling Facebook and to pretend to be American on the social media accounts and make pro-Trump comments and stuff on New York Times, on like publications, and as well it's Facebook and Twitter. And the news sources these posts get parroted by news sources. Like, I think even Fox News came out with it one time.
Yeah.
And
well, that's what I know for a fact. Sean Hannity did and I still think it was up on his website, did a whole segment on how Trump sent his aircraft to, like, bring troops home or whatever during the Gulf War in the early 1990s. And again, I kept seeing this pop up, and I'm just like, nothing that Trump had done over the course of the election made me, like, think that this was a viable news source. So I, like, did some background into it, and I found through different fact-checking websites that Trump Airlines had been bought out by another airline, but that was, like, basically contracted to fly troops home after the Gulf War. So, well, it might be true that, like, a Trump plane, plane with Trump's name, did land and pick people up to take them home from the Gulf War. Trump himself never actually sent his personal plane to pick these people up. It's just like, that's what people don't get, is you can't just because you shared it doesn't make it true. Just because, you know, 10,000 other people have shared it doesn't make it true. You have to sit there and do fact checks, and that is the dangerous thing
Yeah, so
of tweeting and posting things that come from not credible news sources.
So one of these famous trolls, Russian trolls, was talking to Samantha Bee, who's obviously a leftist and everything, but she said, "Are Russian trolls to blame for that? Maybe people are to blame too because they're lazy and believe everything they read."
Mm-hmm.
Which is completely true. Like,
Yeah.
if you're scrolling down your timeline and you see something absurd, like that's big news, you're gonna want to share it. Especially in modern day world, everybody's trying to post politics and everything on Twitter, and no matter what, stuff goes viral like crazy.
I feel like everyone is looking for that gotcha, like,
yeah,
ha, you're wrong type post.
Definitely.
And it's almost addicting, I feel like. You know, I mean, personally, like, since the election, since Trump was elected, you know, scrolling through Facebook and Twitter, there are like multiple times that I have just wanted to post something or share something or comment on people's posts and just be like, you know, but I realize that, you know, showing some restraint in that extent prevents, you know, this continuing cycle of let me try and one up you.
So there's another thing that the Washington Post reported that were fake ads circulating on Twitter with fonts and imagery, like the same typography used in the Clinton campaign. And they told the Clinton backers, like on Twitter, that they could save time and vote from home by texting her name to a five-digit phone number. And one of the ads read, "Vote early, text Hillary to 59925. And another one was written in Spanish. So it's like, I don't know if people like actually believe that, but I oh my gosh, I wish that was like a real number that people would get information and see how many people actually texted it to see if people did it.
I forget. Again, I'd have to look up the news source. It might have been John Oliver's show, which you can say, oh, John Oliver's is a, you know, comedy show or whatever, but like John Oliver saying on his own show, they fact check everything that they present on it. But I think he was saying that some sort of statistics came out, and it's like the majority of Americans get their news now from Facebook, and it's like, so not only are we having a majority of fake news articles being shared on Facebook, but a majority of people are saying they get their news from Facebook. So you see the like issues with the amount of stories being shared that aren't true. And the question is, like, what can we do? I know Facebook's actually, I've seen a few articles, you know, basically coming out that says Facebook has been coming under fire for basically allowing this kind of like unchecked news posting to happen. But it's like, at the same time, what is Facebook supposed to do? Like, they can't, I guess they could limit the content, but then as soon as Facebook starts loaning the content of, like, people's, you know, what people view, then they'll come under fire of maybe being partisan.
Yeah, that did happen.
They did, the Facebook...
During the primaries, because I remember they did, like, suppress some information.
And apparently it was, like, more right-wing.
Yeah, and they suppressed a lot of it because it was like, I think they suppressed a lot of the, like when the FBI investigation started coming out against Clinton, that's when they started suppressing the stuff, if I can remember correctly. But, I mean, and they would get accused of it again, but it's...
And you can also see, too, why, you know, like a majority of Americans now distrust mainstream media. You know, like we said, we're not saying that, you know, mainstream media is omniscient or, you know, correct, but the thing is, these are, like, journalists, like, credible journalists that are doing
Sometimes
real
credible.
work. Okay. But it's, like, credible journalists doing real work through real journalism. Like, they're beholden to, like, a certain, like, code of ethics. You know, like, every profession has a code of ethics. You know, planning, for example, which we're both studying. If you want to become a certified planner, you have to adhere to the code of ethics that is part of being a certified planner. And, like, journalists have the same thing too. So they're not going to be, you know, posting these outlandish things, but like that doesn't stop trolls from posting whatever they want.
Oh, I know. It just bothers me because there's like no matter what, I don't care what side of the aisle it's on. Whenever I see like stupid stuff like that, I'm like, why are you guys posting this? Like,
yeah,
click on the damn page and read it. If you really want to like make a difference, share it and say this is false.
Yeah. I mean, it's just unbelievable what people come out and. I mean, it's like I don't know, and the scary thing is there is no answer at this point how to fix it. Because, like we said, you know, how do you fix it? Like,
it's the uninformed sheep that I like to refer to them.
And as we both said, it's like coming from both sides.
Yeah.
It's not.
Yeah.
This isn't a. Look at the Republicans; they're stupid because they're doing this. Look at, you know, like I said, like me as being a liberal, like one of the things that has driven me insane is the amount of Bernie or Busters sharing stuff saying that, I agree that Hillary Clinton to a certain extent was a corrupt candidate, and as I've stated before, I was never a huge supporter of hers until she won the Democratic election. But like, people sit there and they're like, oh, why do you, like, Bernie Sanders sold out for supporting Hillary Clinton? Like, no, that's just how the normal process works. Like, you have primaries, and, you know, you're always going to have, when you get in the general election, like, the other side playing clips of people that now support. Like, there's clips from 2008 of Barack Obama ripping into Hillary Clinton for not being a good candidate, but it's like that's how you get elected. Like you have to a certain extent attack your opponent in today's like political realm, but like to sit there and deride people now from like for supporting their party candidate, the fact that Bernie Sanders doesn't even consider himself a Democrat, and to like come out and support. You know, he could have done the protest, gone the protest. I almost, like, Bernie Sanders stayed too long. But, you know, people deride him for sticking that, and I believe it's because of this hyper-partisanship and this constant belief in these news articles that are just wrong.
Oh, yeah. And I guess on that note, we can kind of close out and give you guys some tips on how to Facebook correctly. I guess the first one would be read first and then share. And
these seem like common sense, but let's be honest, almost everyone has at least shared one article where they
Oh yeah, and I definitely am guilty.
I would say myself. I'm guilty. I mean, not to a level of some people, but I mean, I think everyone, including ourselves, have been guilty at least once of sharing something.
And
that they didn't read fully.
Over the past 5 or 6 months, I haven't shared any like political stuff just because, with my new job and everything, I have 270 kids added, and I don't want to create like a divide among any of them, so I don't bother sharing any of that stupid stuff. But like before then, I was definitely guilty of it, and it's the worst thing that anybody can do is not read it and then share it, and then it could be something not even talking about it, like that Huffington Post one. And then also check their source and then check their sources. So, like, yes, if you read it, and check the source that they're getting it from, and then go check if they're getting it from another site or something, go check that source. And
feeding off that statement, and I know that a lot of times people will say, oh, those are Democratic. Like, I mean, a lot of times, like, oh, these are Democratic, so you can't trust them. Check a fact checker, because, if you go read most fact checkers, and even if you, like, try and find, I'm saying, like, And this goes to the thing, it's hard, but, like, find multiple sources that either corroborate or denounce a story. Like, don't sit there and, just read a thing and automatically think it's true.
Yeah, I found, it was in the month of October, and there were things that, because I pay attention to it every now and then, and, like, obviously I listen to and pay attention to right-wing sites and, like, talk show hosts, so I get information, and then also, yes, I'm getting information from them, but I also fact-check these and, like, do my own research to see if it's actually true, and one of them was the PolitiFact claim for, like, there were, I think, seven things that we're talking about the Clinton campaign, like, covering for Hillary, and PolitiFact just reported falsely on it.
But, I mean, I'm not saying just use PolitiFact. I mean, the Washington Post has a fact checker. There's, beyond PolitiFact, there's, like, 3 or 4 major fact checkers. And while I'm not saying that let me put it this way. No news media outlet will be 100% unbiased. That's just, it's impossible because human beings are biased.
Yeah.
But the thing is, the most reliable news you're going to get are from established news sources and fact checkers, both on the right and the left.
See, my suggestion is my main thing to
do. I think we argue about interpreting data and policy. These hyper-partisan things are just, like, completely untrue and not based in any sort of fact. So where you present a right-leaning, opinion or news source or whatever, and I can say, well, I don't think they're interpreting that data in the right way. Here's my interpretation of it from the other side. That's not happening with these, people aren't doing that.
Yeah. And I think also, like, my big thing to do now, I don't even give my money or time to the news sources, like, not even Fox News. I just don't like riding the partisanship bandwagon, and I don't really pay attention to mainstream news media sources, so I will go and watch C-SPAN. It's super boring sometimes, and, like, it's just
but
like
that's where you're gonna.
But that's where you're gonna get the news, and then they have people call in on C-SPAN.
Other recommendations, like, go look up raw data. If you truly want an unbiased look at something, go look up raw data. Like, it sounds terrible, and you're gonna have to sift through Excel spreadsheets. I mean, the reason we know about this, I think, is because we have to do it for planning. A lot of planning is reading into data, demographics, different things like that. And there's sources, like, if you go to the U.S. Census Bureau or anything like that, you can find raw data. So if you truly want a completely unbiased look, then go look at raw data. Is literally the best advice I can give you. But at least, if you are about to post something, at least acknowledge that, 1, it's either opinion, or 2, corroborate your story with 2 or 3 other reliable news sources.
Yeah, and I mean, the best thing you can do, like you said, after watching that video, well, not video, I saw the video on your computer when you were talking about the 4-year-old kid that died.
Yeah.
Or whatever, the false story. Just like you did, just go Google it. Google the story.
Yeah.
And look up to see if it's true or not, and get it from multiple sites and look into it. It's, I mean, yes, it takes an extra 5 minutes out of your day, but it's
better than sharing something that's completely
and then
false.
making you look like a complete baboon.
I mean, if I could have the job of Facebook fact checker, I think that should be a job where you just, I don't know, that'd be interesting, but obviously no one has time to just, there's so many things I just want to, like, write, but that'd just be falling into the, exacerbating the problem instead of fixing it. But yes, just go, please. Even if it's a counterpoint, like a lot of these things are, like I said, interpretations of data. So you're gonna find points and counterpoints, but just do your background checks. Like
if the stories don't even have sources or anything, just why doesn't it have sources? Go look it up.
Yeah.
Like when I look at Facebook
when you write a college
posts and
paper, you have to list every single one of your sources. When you create anything or do something at work, you have to like cite your stuff, and like it works the same. I mean, it works for the same way for like if you're sharing stuff on Facebook. If it doesn't have a reliable source, then it's most likely not true.
Yeah, it's. I just can't. I can't get over the fact that people like don't read it. I mean, it just explains. I mean, essentially, it just kind of reiterates what people think about the millennial generation. They think it's all a bunch of lazy kids who are ill-informed.
Going
and it proves it.
Let me pull this up. Another big issue, and this will be our last kind of topic on this tonight. Is it goes beyond just like text or like news articles. It's graphics too. So there's this great article, and this is like big for me. I spent 2 years studying geography and cartography, looking at maps and how do you present maps and how do you present data. Because what you don't realize about maps if you don't have a background in it is that all maps have data behind it. And give me just a sec to find this, but there was a great article that was done by a geographer who basically gives you steps to making sure that the data you're looking at is true. And it makes sense for us.
Mm-hmm. Well, we even had a class on it, interpreting statistics, and I think it was our first statistics class in our freshman year talked about how there's maps and there's statistics that are skewed to make it look different and make the eyes perceive something else.
So this article was written by Andrew Weissman, and he is, let me see if I can get his background. Okay, it doesn't give it right off the top, but I'm pretty sure I read into him, and he's a geographer of some sort. And he basically talks about how maps can be misleading, and so he gives just some advice that I wanted to run over if you're looking at maps. So for example, don't trust the title. He says a good map maker should correctly and succinctly explain what their map actually shows rather than making grand slam claims. One of the best examples is a New York Times article of an interactive map that says best and worst places to grow up. While it might seem self-explanatory, the data behind this article, this particular map, really only shows that people make more or less money depending on where they grow up.
Yeah.
So, it's an interesting finding. It's not even really necessarily presenting the stuff that it necessarily said in the title. It says a red flag with map titles should also, or another red flag would be Upworthy-esque words like amazing, incredible, gorgeous, or so on. For example, this incredible map shows half the U.S. output is generated in a few cities, or
Yeah, and in that map it talks about how the map makes it suggest that people in cities are more productive than people in rural areas, but it actually shows that 50% of the GDP of the country is generated by 50% of the population.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's just...
Yeah. Which is, makes sense, but, that's how you read it. The second thing, and this is what we've already said, he says, the source is important. So, the source data of a map is one of the first things you should look at, which news articles, too, what we just talked about. For example, if a source is not listed, be suspicious. be suspicious even it is. So he says, for example, there was a viral map of the most hated college basketball teams. The cartographer included a bit of metadata listing himself as the creator. However, the data itself is from a 2-question Google Docs survey that was posted on Reddit and is hardly representative of all groups of Americans. The next thing he says, heat density maps can confuse. So, for example, there's a graphic here and it says the business implications are clear, and it shows our site's users and subscribers to Martha Stewart's living, and then it says consumers of furry pornography. And it's all the same heat density. But basically, all it's showing is the density of population within the United States, which makes sense that, like, with higher, concentration of people, there's going to be a higher concentration of just about anything you look at. And he says, what is the cartographer trying to show, and what is he trying to hide? Because, like we said, every sort of person has a, agenda, And then the way the data is distributed is important. So, look at, the way percentages are based on, because, something might look incredibly, oh, look how high that is. But if your final, data, class or whatever, is percentage from 50 to 100%, and then all your other categories are only 5 or 5 to 10 percentage point breaks, then yes, it's going to look like that. It's incredibly dense. And then he talks about choropleth maps being tricky, which again, that's more geography stuff I don't really want to get into, but I think this is so relevant to, you've seen people share on Facebook, look at all the counties that voted for Trump, and then here they did a map of, this was of the 2012 election, and if you, aggregate the map based on, population of the county and what the percentage is for who they voted for, it's actually very telling why Hillary Clinton won the popular vote, yet
because she's in
the electoral
and that's
college.
I mean, that's one thing that I think a lot of the people who are bashing the electoral college for are trying to say that Hillary won the popular vote. Well, obviously she won the popular vote when New York and California are hardcore, have been blue forever, and there's millions of more people in those two states alone than
maybe
some
that's
states
something
combined.
we cover in the future, because I'd love to actually debate. I've seen the good, I've read about the goods and the bads of the electoral college, and it'd actually be a great topic. But I just wanted to wrap up with saying, also look into the base data. So, for example, he presents this map of, and it's a beautiful map of all the
whoa, Donald.
all the rivers in the United States, and it's oh, look at it, really deep. But if you take a look at a closer look at the data, you see that there's sort of and I'll show you, there's these lines and stuff in places like Texas and parts of the Midwest. And basically what the argument he's making is that depending on where they're getting their data from, everything's mapped differently. So where one area in the United States had a deeper level of rivers and creeks and stuff mapped, other places didn't, which creates this patchwork kind of map.
Yeah.
And well, that's not that bad for rivers in the United States, that's pretty ambiguous, but in other sort of where data matters more, that could be an issue. And then finally, just maps are still good, but just again, what we've been saying throughout this whole thing is make sure you know what you're looking at.
Oh yeah. Just Google it.
Yeah.
Get multiple sources from Google.
When in doubt, gather other sources from Google.
Alright, I think that's going to wrap up this final episode. Episode number 8. I guess we will see you back here next time.
Yeah, well, we're actually, fun fact, congratulate us. We've now officially finished the podcast for our class. However, I think we have decided that we may continue to do this. You know,
Yeah,
who knows how many listeners we have.
I'm gonna do some guerrilla marketing and see if we can get some listeners and maybe make something out of this.
Yeah,
if people like it.
The thing is, we're doing this for a class right now, but we do enjoy doing it. So, if you enjoy listening to us, great. If you think
throw us a like on YouTube.
Yeah, if you think we're a bunch of stupid college kids, great.
We
We'll probably
are.
we'll probably still make these periodically. But anyways, thanks for listening to us for that last 8 podcasts. Well, we did this for our class, and hopefully you continue to listen to us as we kind of periodically post moving forward.
Oh, yeah. We will see you back here in
sometime soon.
Yeah, sometime soon.